Well, that was a bit of a surprise. Hang on there. Jane Mayer is a great American journalist, as fearless, as honest, as true as any of her generation, of any generation. She's not afraid of anyone, least of all editors. She takes it to heart. She takes it as a sense of mission in her life's work that the job of a great reporter is to apply pressure to power. Ask Ronald Reagan and the other bad actors involved in the Iran-Contra fiasco. Ask Clarence Thomas and the Gorgons of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Her reporting has done as much to expose sexism and sexual harassment as anyone in the last 40 years. Strange Justice, a book she wrote with a journalist whose name is now lost to history, Jill Abramson. Strange Justice exposed lying and gross male misbehavior in a way that should continue to shadow the guilty parties, including a sitting justice on the Supreme Court. That book endured vicious counterattacks, only to see those attackers retreat and even come to recognize the truth over time. Do not mess with Jane Mayer. I'm willing to concede that Jane worked at other publications prior to The New Yorker, particularly the Wall Street Journal, where she was the paper's first female White House correspondent and had a strong hand in covering everything from the bombing of the Marine barracks in Beirut to the first Gulf War. But I think it's fair to say, and a source of enormous pride, that her greatest work has been at the magazine, her work on Guantanamo, on illegal surveillance, on illegal interrogations and renditions, and call it by its proper name, torture. Torture that changed the nature of our understanding of the Bush administration and its shameful tactics. More recently, her work on the way big money from ideological quadrillionaires like the Koch family, has infected American politics and has changed the national conversation. Jane, along with her brilliant editor Dan Zalewski and her running mates in the DC office of the magazine, have worked tirelessly to do the essential thing, put pressure on power. I'm deeply proud of Jane. Everybody at the magazine is. Let me say it again. Jane Mayer is a fantastic American journalist. Fearless, honest, decent, and true. Congratulations to her, and thank you for honoring her.
Thank you so much. Wow. I used to tell my daughter, don't mess with Jane also, but it didn't always work when she was an adolescent. Anyway, thank you so much, David. I have to say, I count myself as an incredibly lucky person to be here today, but of all the good luck I've had, there's none better than having David Remnick as my editor and being able to work for him at The New Yorker, which is pretty much the dream place to work. And I'm also glad to say that Dan Zalewski, who has had to suffer through my stories before they were edited, is also here today. So thank you, Dan. So when I got asked to do this program, I was told that we needed to come up with a kind of a personal story about our improbable climbs to the top. And I was thinking about this because for somebody like me, it's actually not that comfortable to talk personally. I got into the business when there was kind of a just the facts ma'am kind of protocol. And when I worked at the Wall Street Journal, there was actually a rule, which was that you were not allowed to use the first person singular pronoun I unless the sentence ended with the words, was shot in the groin. So clearly, winning the right to speak personally was kind of a mixed blessing. And when I was thinking back about this recently, it occurred to me that even though groin is actually a gender-neutral anatomical term, it was subconsciously kind of a guy's euphemism, a macho war correspondent code, which isn't surprising because when I joined the Wall Street Journal in 1981, guys ruled, and they wrote the rules. And Hemingway and maybe for the more hip, Tom Wolfe and Hunter Thompson were the idols, but there weren't a lot of women stars of that magnitude in the profession yet, and nor were all the doors open yet. I became the first female White House correspondent for the Wall Street Journal, but I'll never forget that when it came to covering arms control summits, there was a saying, which was, girls don't do throw weight. They didn't think that we were quite capable of getting the math that might be necessary to cover arms control. So when Reagan went to Reykjavik, which was a historic arms control summit, I was asked to stay home and do a profile of Nancy Reagan's favorite dress designer. But then it turned out Reagan went to Reykjavik and offered to sort of bargain away all of the US nuclear arsenal, and his advisors didn't really think he knew that much about math or arms control either. So, but nobody attributed it, of course, to his gender. So a lot has changed for the better since those early days. My daughter, who is a 20-year-old college student, recently confided in me that her ambition is to be like Samantha Power, the Pulitzer Prize-winning war correspondent, Harvard Law School graduate, ambassador to the United Nations, who is also a mother of two, and of course, gorgeous. So when I asked my daughter, so why Power? She replied, because she's both badass and beautiful. And I have to say, I love it that young women feel that they no longer have to trade off one of those two essential female traits. But I also wanted to say at the same time that while most things are better, and the world that my daughter and the fabulous winners of the scholarships here today are entering into is one that thankfully offers many more opportunities to women and others in the past who were discriminated against, I think there's still some virtue in the old school, old-fashioned, even macho rules of the road that governed reporting back in the dawn of time when I joined the profession. The reason that the first person singular was used so sparingly was because we writers and reporters knew that we were not there to focus on ourselves. In the midst of an era that might be called the selfie culture, I think it's worth remembering and passing on to the next generation in this profession that at its best, journalism is about using our skills and power to give voice to other people's stories, quite often the stories of people who don't have enough voice in this world. It's also about being fearless and shining a light on important stories that others are trying to cover up. I may be wrong, but I think women in particular, who have traditionally been outsiders in the world's most powerful inner sanctums, are especially well situated to see and hear the stories of those who are locked out and to turn a skeptical eye on the self-satisfied claims of those in power. Whether it's telling the story of prisoners in CIA dungeons who were tortured and hidden for years, or the stories of innocents who became collateral damage in drone strikes, or in this country, the stories of little-known small-time candidates who were suddenly buried alive in avalanches of billionaires' campaign spending, or even the real story of Anita Hill, not the fake one that was cooked up by powerful, politically motivated detractors. For me, there's been nothing more fun nor more meaningful than finding the truth, shaping the history, and telling the story of something much bigger than myself. So today, I just wanted to end by saying my story, the one that got me here today, is really the story of many, many other people who've entrusted me to speak for them. They, along with the incredibly talented and generous colleagues and editors and publishers who've helped me tell their stories, many of whom are here today, are the ones who deserve the honors. I wouldn't be here without them. Thank you.